So I had
I don't know
to,
what's happened. Zoom's just stopped recording and then started again. How strange.
ooh.
It's very spooky.
It's
Um, yeah, so sorry, you were doing garden party first of all, is that right?
Yeah, so I was doing a garden party with a band called Not Safe with a Razor, best band name. Um,
I love it.
and yeah, I was just saying, like, normally I will decide what to play, when to just shut up and get off stage kind of thing, based
Mhm.
on what like the lead singer wants and looks at
Yeah.
me. And he just wouldn't look at me the whole gig, like at all. And so I had to keep turning around. There was a guy playing upright bass. And so I just kept turning around to him, and he was two shoots to the wind. He had a hip flask and was drinking the whole show. And he was just there bopping, going, yeah, rock it. I was like, okay, Marcus.
It's
Um,
so bizarre though, because see, like those sorts of gigs, um, it's so reliant on like the non-verbal communication between everyone, and you have to look at each other.
excellent.
And it was we had a weird one. So the band that I play with the most is like a covers band called Hardly Original. Um, and we haven't played anything for ages because I've been a loser at university and having to do other things. But when we started, we did a couple of gigs last year, and the other guitar player that's in the band with us, that's the first thing we said when we got onto stage because we hadn't rehearsed. He just said, "We'll be fine. Just lots of eye contact. We're good. We've got it.
Yeah.
We've got it." But it's a weird thing that, like, if you haven't been in bands or you're not used to doing that, it's such a strange thing. And you're like, because I'm the same. I'm often looking at people for cues, or looking at the singer, or looking at someone. It's like, somebody, please look at me.
What's happening next? Like, where are we going? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think like this guy, the four of them are like a pretty tight band. They gig all the time. And
Mhm.
so don't think he was used to having somebody else just joining them. But Phil plays with them. And so Phil was like, hey, Naomi's going to be there. We're doing a set. You know, is it okay if
Mhm.
she jumps on? They're like, yeah, it's fine. But the weird thing is, I never even heard the name of the guy playing banjo and some mandolin and different things. Don't even know his name. Like, and people just assume that, if you're playing on stage together, that you rehearse together, you'll know each other. I'm like, I literally never even heard the guy's name. Which is
Yeah.
like, yeah.
It's a weird thing, and something that it all sounds pure creepy when I say this. Like, when I don't mean it to sound creepy, but when I was watching you at Larbin, because that doesn't sound creepy at all.
Okay,
but
all
but because I didn't really get to hear you play much until the last night when we did
right.
our
Okay.
performance, and I'd mentioned this. I think it was either Stu or Richard. I'd brought your name up on one of the podcasts, and I'd said, as soon as you played the first note in your group in violin, I was like, yeah, Naomi's class. Like, I can just tell that, like, you were so comfortable. And but it's obviously like, you've done it so much. You felt so, like, to me, watching you, I was like, you feel so relaxed. You feel so confident. And within half a note, I was like, yeah, she's going to be class.
Oh no, I tell you, you're still bricking it. There's like,
Do you,
I
though?
think,
Like, are you
yeah,
genuinely?
genuinely. I think for me, it's also, I knew that some of the tutors there knew my background and, knew teachers that I'd studied with and where I'd been at school and all the rest of it. And so they're going to have these expectations of me. And there's no way I'm going to be able to meet those expectations. And so it's always this like internal pressure of like, I'm not going to be good enough. I'm never going to meet that mark. Um,
So, for well, and for me as well, like, what is your background then? So, because I've
so
just known you for a week or so.
I know, like really strange. So I started violin when I was like 5 or something. In London, my parents lived in London for like a year, and they had like a Suzuki program. So
Nice.
Suzuki is, you sort of learn by ear first, and then you learn to read music later. So I started there for a year, came back to Northern Ireland, and the school said, no, she's too good for us to teach her. So my mum then had to go around and try and find like private teachers or whatever. And so I got into School of Music when I was 7, and then went to a boarding school over in England, a music school. So I went to Wells Cathedral School on a full scholarship, and studied there when I was 11 till when I was 17. I skipped a year, so I graduated a year early. And then got really turned off music. I had a really strict teacher. I would burst into tears in half my lessons, and just it was a really high pressure situation. So I think when I was about 15 or 16, I told her I wasn't going to be a violinist. And then finally our relationship actually got better, and I actually became a better violinist because I was less freaked out, I think, the whole time. Quit violin, went to med school, got really sick, dropped out of med school, and then went back to violin. And when we moved to Colorado, I just word of mouth. I'd started gigging. I'd been asked to play in a church service, and then there was somebody at the church who was a member of the Colorado Symphony Orchestra or something, who then was like, "Hey, will you come and do a gig for us?" And so I just ended up freelancing and doing a bunch of stuff over there. So yeah, very classical background. And joined my first band when I was like 16, and playing sort of Irish versions of other songs, of just cover songs, but sort of making them Irish. We got invited to do a tour of America, tour of Africa. So we got some pretty cool touring as a teenager. It was pretty sweet. And that was sort of my first foray into the world of improvising and getting away from the classical world. And
so do you, I'm really fascinated, just so there's a couple of things that you said that is super interesting to me. So one is, you said that with the Suzuki program that you learned to play by ear first before you got into notation.
Yeah.
So I'm of the same kind of background, nowhere near your level of expertise in this, but with my guitar tutor when I was at school, he would get us to play things by ear, or whenever there was notation in kind of inverted, he would write chords down for us, like just chord sheets and like lead sheets, but he wouldn't put anything in order. So he'd say, "That's what's in the song, you go and piece it together." So I've always been the same way with learning. But I've always felt super insecure if there's only a handful of times I've ever had reading gigs, like if I'm doing stuff for theatres or whatever, and I always feel like a massive like imposter because everyone else in the pit's just like reading it as if, you know, and I'm having to really focus to do the job. But yeah, like you seem to have balanced both really well, because
I think because of all the classical training I had. So, you know, I started violin when I was 5. I probably started learning to read music when I was 6 or 7. And then I think by the time I was 8, I think I did my grade 5 theory when I was 8. So I moved up quite quick because I had the knowledge of how to play the violin and how the notes worked. But the theory just built on from that. So yeah, music theory and stuff and reading notes. I think for me, if you start an instrument really young, it gives you a huge advantage. But at the same time, I don't think you're ever too old to start. You know, I've got one student who started violin as a retirement project, which is awesome. Like, it's really cool. But, you know, it's both, I think both of the pros and cons. I think learning to play by ear, I would argue, gives you a much wider range of music that you can play. And much more access to different stuff. Like, I don't know, do you find that with like learning to play by ear, that you're more able to jump into bands or pick up songs?
Yeah, I think really to be honest, I used to feel really bad about it because I used to teach for like a local music hub and like for our county council, and we would all get together like as guitar tutors, and you'd have a, you know, like a table of guitar tutors, a table of violinists, a table of whoever else, and there was all these discussions about, when I'm teaching students, I use this book, and it was all notation, and I felt like a massive knob by saying like, actually, I don't. I ask the kids, what do you like? What do you want to learn how to play?
That is the thing.
Like, let's work it out, and like that's like normal to me. And everyone's like, we can't do that. And I was like, well, why? Like the kids enjoy doing it and they get so much out of it.
You should ask them what the retention rate is. How many kids quit for them versus how many kids quit on you? I mean,
Yeah.
like that's one thing I find. I was recently started teaching in some schools down about 40 minutes away from me, so a bit of a drag. But there was a couple of students who were like, I'm quitting at the end of the year. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, instead of working on your grade 3 or grade 4 pieces or whatever, let's just, what do you want to play? And let's do some improvising. So, would teach them like the pentatonic scales, the blues scales, the minor pentatonic, major, all this different stuff, and then just improvise. And both of them were like, this is amazing. Like, I didn't know music could be so much fun. And both of them are now keeping on their instruments next year. And I feel a bit bad because they're moving to different schools. So they're moving to different teachers. So I'm like, I really hope that the new teacher is open to being flexible with them. Because I'm like, if a kid's not going to go and be a classical musician, a professional musician, going through the grades, it might give them a mile marker, but it's not teaching them to express themselves. It's not giving them that love and passion.
It's what I found is, so like at high school, all I cared about when I was at school was I was interested in learning guitar, and the rest of the subjects I really couldn't care about. And I wasn't a great student at school, full stop. When I ended up at times being suspended from school for fighting and all sorts of silly things. And the only thing that kept me wanting to go back was my guitar teacher came in on a Thursday, and I wanted to learn like the next thing from him. And if I'd had a teacher who'd stuck notation in front of us, I guarantee I wouldn't have stuck to it. And I've even went through the process because I left school with sort of 0 qualifications, and I got a rubbish job that I hated and just you grind away at. And then I thought, actually, sod this, I'm going to do my grades. So I did my first couple of grades just sort of self-taught. And then I met my, I say my guitar tutor. I met a really good guitar tutor called Jimmy, who was in Newcastle, because it was his studio where the grades were held. And I'd asked him if he would help me go through the grades. And I'm so thankful to meeting Jimmy. He was one of the best the best sort of mentors you could have in terms of just helping you with music. But same as what you've said, with your teacher being strict, I felt Jimmy was really strict. And it got to a point where I was getting towards the end of doing my grades, and I thought, like, I'm not enjoying doing this, like running arpeggios, running scales, like, I don't care. I want to go and do big screaming guitar solos in a band.
Yeah, exactly. And it is about getting the right balance. It really is, because it's, if you don't have the technique, if you can't read the notes, as you said, it's like you feel inferior whenever. And I don't want any kid to ever feel inferior. I don't want them to leave me and go to another teacher and just feel like, oh, well, I can't play anything. So it is getting that balance of saying, okay, well, we're going to spend half of the lesson just improvising and learning fun stuff. We're going to spend the other half of the lesson doing hard work, but it'll pay off.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. But I've got a student who's very like you. Like, I've had the principal come to me saying, thank you so much for this kid, because he's getting into fights, going to detention. I had the kid's mum on the phone, which is unheard of for school students, mum phone, just to say thank you. And I was like, when I heard that she wanted to call me, I was like, what have I done? It was like this moment of panic. It was like, oh no. And it's just really sweet.
But like a good music teacher, I think it's so underappreciated, but it changes lives. Like, so for some people, that's the thing that kind of keeps them hanging on. And it's, for me, music's just, it's been ever evolving in my life, that it's something I grew up in bands. So once I could play guitar, I was in punk bands and rock bands, and I loved it. And it was the normal thing for me just to be in bands. And it was just, I don't know. I often wonder like what would have been like if I didn't get into music and I just continued grinding the sort of horrible jobs that
Yeah.
you just do. Um, and now as I'm a bit older, I'm finding that I'm slowly starting to get to do the things that I've always really wanted to do. I'm starting to get the confidence that I've been able to start writing my own music for myself, not just being as part of a band. And it's helping me loads with my mental health and helping me in so many different ways. I think I don't know, I just think it's so undervalued. Um, I know it's like a tale as old as time, but
No, 100% agree. And I think like often with a teacher, you'll know yourself, it's not just about teaching the subject. It's not just about teaching the instrument. It's teaching relationships. It's teaching how to be vulnerable as well in your music and in what you're doing.
mm,
And it's, I've got one little boy. I keep talking about all my students as a blow, but like one little kid who, for his first like 3 lessons, rolled around on the floor. Like his mum had to take his shoes off when he came into the room because she was like, "He'll kick you." I'm like this kid was like insane. I mean, he was like 5, and was it last week? Was the first time he sat at the piano for 30 minutes, a full 30-minute lesson, which was like yes, he still can't play anything, but just she was like no other teacher. She had taken him to several other teachers, and all of them had refused to teach him because they're like, he's not got the behavior, he's not behaving himself, he's not ready to listen, he's not. And so she was just like, I don't really mind about that, but it's he can't go to school because of his behavior issues, so we're delaying his start at school, and we just need him to learn. Like,
yeah,
so I'm like, okay, well, I'm not really I'm teaching him a bit of music, but it's more just how to behave, how to be a human being. and
yeah.
uh, and he's great. He's doing so, and he's starting to play little tunes and stuff on the piano, which is really nice to see. So
Mhm.
yeah.
So something that you just said there as well is just it's really resonated with us when you've said that you can it sort of teaches you to be vulnerable and teaches you.
Mhm.
So this is a really new lesson to me because I've I don't know if this is just me as a not as a musician, maybe just as a person, but I've always struggled. It's taken me up until maybe a year or so ago where I've been comfortable talking to people, like even talking to like my wife about how I feel and how what's going on in my head, what's annoying me, what's making me happy, and um, it seems to be a part of me that I never really bothered doing much with, and just sort of shutting it off. But actually, writing the music's helped me loads. So for the one of the parts of my final project, I wrote my first solo song, and
Amazing.
I did the lyrics. I put everything together, and I gave myself a deadline of that's when I'm going to put it out, and whether it's finished or not, it's going out. But it was a song that was like really like super personal to us, and it was about my brother, and we'd had some issues, um and there was days I would sit and I sat in this chair in my little music room corner and just sit and like floods of tears writing stuff and trying to sing things and like and then when I'd got through that process, I'd actually felt much better about just everything because I'd managed to write it down and like purge everything and
Yeah.
um but that feeling of like vulnerability, because when I actually put it out, I thought I'm gonna have to because this is for my final project, and then I put it out and I thought, oh shit, like everyone's gonna hear this, and then I
No,
thought, oh no, but so that vulnerability for you as well, like how's that? Like
yeah,
how
well,
do you cope with that?
it's horrible, isn't it? Because anytime I put like I've just recently, like since we did that unit on using social media as part of our course, and I was like, okay, I'm going to push myself. I'm actually going to try and put some stuff on social media, which I've never done before, and I was like, this is
It's really good, man. I'm liking it.
it's terrifying though, because it's like you never know what are people going to think, and like there'll be like friends and stuff who are always going to like everything you put up, but it's like what's Joe Blogg's going to think, or
Yes.
the friends that I went to school with who are all, I mean, we're talking top class musicians. Do you know the band Clean Bandit?
Yeah.
So the violinist Stephanie was one of my, like, we were in string quartets together and stuff growing up, and Stephanie Benedetti, and then there was, you know, just all of these. I've got people who are soloists, like literally touring the world, soloing with orchestras. People who are in one of my friends in my year was the youngest ever member of the London Philharmonic. Like,
Nice.
you know, we're like, I'm talking about these like incredible violinists, and you just go, oh my god, they're going to hear my playing and just be like, what's Naomi done with her life? And, you know, you just always have these self doubts, and just constantly.
So do you think that, because you're in a really unusual position there, because the caliber of people that you've grew up with and sort of learnt with, I mean, that's like an abnormally high standard of
Exactly.
musician.
With your head, it really messes your head. Like, I mean, because basically the average standard for an 11-year-old at a music school is about grade 8. So, you know, you think grade 8 by age 11, what they're like at age 17, 18 is, you know, phenomenal. And piano students are even more advanced for whatever reason. I guess pianists tend to get to a higher level younger. And so I think by age 12 or something, they're expecting to be a diploma. And so, you know, there's me playing piano and always thought I was the world's crappiest piano player because I was comparing myself against people who were just a gazillion times better. And it's, but then whenever you step out of that environment, people go, oh, you're really good at, you know, playing piano. Like, I still to this day, I'm like, the idea of playing piano in front of anybody is like absolutely horrifying. And it's like, I had people asking me to teach them piano. And so I thought, well, I better go and at least get my grade 8. So I gave myself, you're going to laugh, because I gave myself, I think from the day I got the music to when I did the video one, you can do like a video exam. So when I recorded the video, I did it in 5 weeks. So I learned my grade 8 things and got like 100, I got a really high mark.
Nice.
So I got a distinction and everything. But for me, I was just like, how I would still never ever dream of, like, if you were to say to me now, oh, play me something on the piano, I'd be like, no, like I'm not a pianist at all. And it's just different, like where different people's standards are, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think as well that, like I said, because you've been amongst a sort of a very elite level of musician, like quite naturally you're bound to think, you know, you're bound to put yourself down. But
Yeah.
genuinely, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, but I could tell within the first second of you playing, from the first note that you played in that group. And yeah, you can check this with with Steve and Rich, but from the first second, like, you know, when you just know, you can tell someone's just the touch on an instrument, and I was like, yeah, like you already know.
Oh, thank you. Rich made me laugh because I was doing something with Rich. In one of the classes, we were improvising together, and he was feeling really stressed out and freaked out because we were just giving sheet music. He was like, I don't read this. Like, what are we supposed to play? So I quickly scribbled down some chords and was like, just play this and I'll mess around. So then we ended up, just the two of us, doing some kind of weird jig thing and just messing, just having a blast. But then he goes afterwards, goes, oh yeah, Naomi will make anyone sound good. And I was like, okay, either you're saying that I'm good or you're saying I'm so crap that anyone was I was like, I'm not quite sure how to take that route.
That's quite a compliment. That's quite a compliment. I love those. I love those compliments. Yeah. But it was like, you know, you were saying about the young students that go to like music schools and the standard. So I remember, I'm going to say an adult. I still don't feel like an adult. But I was an adult when I was doing my grades because I went to it late. Yeah. And I remember, so to test the water, I put myself through grades 1 and 2, and I was like, it's fine. I've got this. I know what to do. And then I think it was either on grade 3 or 4. It was I was at the Sage at Gateshead, and I was sat like rehearsing outside the room, ready to go in for the graded exam. And there's a young lad sat next to us, and he looked really like super nervous. And I thought, you know, I'll try and make him feel a bit better. And I says, "You okay?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And I says, "Are you going in for your graded exam?" I says, "I'm going in for mine too." And he says, yeah, yeah. And I said, so what grade are you going in for? And he was like, I'm in for my grade 8. As I like kicked my grade 4 book under the bench, whatever it was. Oh, that's great. As I left the exam, you feel like snapping your guitar in half. Like, oh.
It was funny. I just had students do their exams. Came downstairs with one of my students who's entered for her grade 8, and she was carrying her violin down. Now she's 14. She's a pretty, decent little player. Carrying her violin down and everything. The examiner looks at me and goes, "Oh, you must be Sienna. Come on in for your exam." And I'm going, "What, you think I'm a 14-year-old girl going in for my exam?" I was like, "No, it's not me." But yeah.
I never get that anymore. It's just.
Oh, yeah.
I think I've just had a rough paper round. That's my problem.
No, I used to get it a lot when I was younger. People used to say I was a lot younger, not so much now. Although today at the go-karting, they would split us into 2 groups. There was like 9 of us, and there was 3 kids and 6 adults. They put me with the kids. They split them into 2 groups, 5 adults and then me and the kids. So I was like, "What are you saying here?" I'm like, I wasn't quite sure whether to be touched or offended.
Well, I have the opposite problem because I remember, I think it was my first or second year teaching at the school that I'm at now. And I was doing a cover lesson. I think I was covering like an art lesson or something for someone. And I was, just the kids were sat working away. And one of the girls in the class had said, "Sir, how old are you?" And this was when like I was it was a while ago. It was probably like five years ago. And I had a lot less grey hair, and I think I had a lot less wrinkles and stuff as well. And just, "How old are you?" And I said like, "Oh, I'm 30. I'm like 29 or 30." And she burst out laughing and she went, "There's no way you're 30 years old." And I ended up like getting me driver's license out, and I was like, "I'm legitimately." And I was like, "How old do you think I was?" And she went, "About like, I don't know, like mid-50s." And I was like, "Cheers, mid-50s."
Holy smoke! Oh,
but like, no, like not trying to just antagonize, like dead serious. And I was like, "Oh, cheers, Marcy. That's amazing. Thanks for that."
Oh my goodness.
My self-esteem is like up here right now.
No, everyone thinks Kent's my husband. Everyone thinks he's like my dad half the time because he's got like completely white hair. So he's like, and it's all long at the moment. I don't know what he's doing to it. He's decided he couldn't be arsed to cut. No, because I wouldn't cut it for him during my course because I was just like, don't have time. So it's all big and poofy, and he looks like Einstein. It's like that guy. Some of my Facebook posts, I think there's a picture of him there. It's like ridiculous.
But speaking of silly haircuts, this is totally irrelevant to what we're actually supposed to be talking about, but it sprang my mind and it makes me laugh, so I'll share with you. There was a new Turkish barbers opened up. This is probably like a number of months ago, but I'd went in to get my haircut, and there was very broken English, so it was just sit down and you just get whatever you would like to have. And I'd said, he'd said very little through the whole haircut, and he did like a really nice job of my hair. When I went in, he'd asked me what I wanted done, and I'd said, "As long as it's shorter than when I came in, I'm quite happy, mate. Like it's absolutely fine." And then because he had this really broken English, as I left, he'd said to me as I was leaving, he says, "Are you happy?" And I went, "Yeah, thanks, man." And he says, "You came in with hair like a muffin." So I had like a big muffin top. And then he said, "Now look at you, sexy bitch." And I was like, "Oh, cheers, mate." So very inappropriate for a hairdresser.
Oh my God. That's hilarious. Yeah, but I think my husband went to one, and he hadn't shaved in months for whatever reason, and he went in, and the hairdresser looked and went, "Okay, we're doing before and after shots." So they literally took before and after shots to put on their wall because he was just so horrendous looking. Like, looked like Bear Grylls, looked like he'd been living in the wilderness. He's just, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm at the point where this is the easiest thing for me to do is I just do my own hair to avoid inappropriate conversations with Turkish barbers. Just do it myself.
They haven't started asking if they can do your nose and ears and eyebrows yet.
Well, they did it with the whole like the flame and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was really good, but genuinely, like it's sort of, I wanted to go back to see if there was going to be other humorous comments made, but I was also a bit worried because I thought I've got some sort of standing in this community, and I can't I can't be seen to be
You don't
getting called a
stand
sexy bitch. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll try and steer our conversation back towards something non hair hair related. But here we go. So part of the reason for me wanting to do this podcast was because I've always struggled quite a lot with what's the word? I don't know if anxiety is the right word. Maybe it is, but even when I was much younger, I'd said before I wasn't really great at sort of expressing myself, and I'm getting better at doing that. And like music helps me loads. But there's so many like those negative thoughts I have in my head. You know, if I'm playing on stage, or if I'm showing some like showing a student something or whatever it is, I feel I've always constantly got that like this narrative going on in my head. And Laban was the same, that when I arrived there, my go-to reaction is to be quite, I'm not going to say loud because I don't know if I'm loud, but um I
You're
like to try
cheery.
and say again.
You're cheery.
There you go. But I often feel I present a different way to what's actually going on inside to kind of get through like situations. And one of the really comforting things to hear from lots of the people I've spoke to is like everyone has the same. So speaking to you and speaking to, I think I said Steve before and I meant Stu. Sorry, Stu. Just call you Steve.
That.
But speaking to everyone on the course, like everyone was in the same boat. And then when I heard, because I think we spoke at one of the pubs, I think, and we were talking about Django and Gabor
Yeah.
and things like that. But just overhearing conversations that people are like, everyone's in the same boat. It's really comforting to hear. So I know if you feel nervous and you have insecurities, I think, well, that's
100%.
it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And the thing is, it's about getting through them as well sometimes, as much as it is anything else. And it's something I've noticed has grown so much more for me as an adult. Like as a kid, I couldn't have cared less. I think there was one competition my mum always talks about. I think I must be about 7 or 8, and I was playing a piece, and I was doing it from memory. Got up, played my little piece, went up to play it, completely forgot what it went like. So went back to the piano, asked them to play it for me, to play a little bit. So I went, oh yeah, I know it now. Went back up again, forgot it again, went back a third time. And then, but the whole time, just with this big, big grin on my face of like, oh, it's okay, I'm just here with my violin, now I'm going to play it, refused to quit, just was like, no, I'm going to play it. And I think the adjudicator like highlighted how awesome it was to see, kids smiling and happy and all the rest, and still give me first place. And I'm like, why did you give me first place? But I think part of it was just that perseverance and to show like it doesn't matter.
Well, that's what's not talked about enough is like the process. And because I think specifically with the way social media presents things and the way that content's presented now, if you go on, I'm sure it's the same for you. You'll have loads of like violin players on Instagram and Facebook, and you'll get a 30-second snip of something they've done, and you're like, whoa, like
Yeah.
how have they? But you don't see all the hundreds of takes they've done before that, probably
Absolutely.
like editing and post, like whatever, and it's
I know.
just
I want to show, I did the concert as part of my final project, I'm sure. And so I did this whole big solo recital. There's one piece I played, and I'm like, I really want to. Part of me wants to be brave enough to post it, and part of me is like, no, I really don't, because of that thing. So it was a reel, just an Irish reel, and at the end of the set, and Irish reels, you've got AABB, AABB. So I've done AABB, A. So the fourth time I'm playing this little part of the melody, I completely blank what it goes like. Like, I mean, no clue. So I just start playing open strings and just rhythms, like da, 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 and just like completely jamming it. And then as soon as I figure out where I'm at, I'm like, oh yeah, and jump back into it. And of course, I assumed everybody's going to know. I'm like, I'm on stage going, oh my goodness, I've just ruined this. This is the most embarrassing thing. I can't believe it. Got off stage and nobody knows, apart from my guitarist I was playing with, who just looked at me and went, did you seriously forget coolies? Like the fourth time through. But yeah, it's that learning how to cover up mistakes and keep going no matter what.
So what do you think caused you, I know this is an impossible thing to answer, but what do you think caused you to forget that? Because assuming it's going to be something you were fairly comfortable with.
Absolutely. And it was easy as well. I think it was a lapse of concentration, pure and simple. I think my mind just went, oh, la-di-da, I like what Phil's doing there, because he'll change up the different riffs and stuff he plays underneath. And or I could have been going, how many times have I done this? Because I lose count all the time. I'm like, especially in those like Irish stuff where it does the same thing gazillion times, and you're going, have I done this twice yet? Have I got to do it again? I'm not quite sure. And they go by so fast that as soon as you've had that thought, you're too late.
And I think that's really similar for. I often worry about if there's a song in a set that I know is an absolute nightmare on the guitar. I would say 99% of the time that's fine. That's absolutely okay. It's the little like 3-chord tricks, 4-chord tricks that are super simple, and you start and you go, it's completely gone from my memory.
Exactly. And it was like all the other stuff, which was like flashy and hard. I was like, okay, I managed to do that. And then this little thing, yeah. But I think the worst one I was playing, the first time this has ever happened to me, like literally ever, was I was doing a gig with Phil, and we were playing it was the same Irish set actually, the same one, but the second tune in it is really fast and quite challenging. Like the girl who wrote it is a classical violinist, and she wrote it as a virtuosic trad piece to try and be a bit more flashy, whatever. And normally it's fine. I've sort of practiced it enough that I've got it onto my fingers. And I hadn't been nervous at all for whatever reason. This gig, I think, because we had just been chilling together and just chatting, and then we just all of a sudden it was time to go on. So I hadn't had time to think.
Yeah.
And we got on stage and we got halfway through it, and I just went, I don't want to be doing this. I'm like, my finger's gonna fall off the fingerboard. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, but I can't stop. And I was like, I have to keep going. And it was just so bizarre. I've never had that particular thought come into my head of, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of terrifying and a bit like, oh, where did that come from? And
it's so bizarre that, because it's lush to hear you saying that, because I often have the most random and like, especially if it's an easy song that you've done loads and loads of times, and as you're playing it, like it's all like muscle memory, and it's just off you go. And I remember there was once that in the function band, my sister sings in the function band. She's like our lead singer, and I remember, I can't even think what song it was, but we ended up having to vamp on an intro over and over, and I thought my sister was off just having like a little dance in the corner somewhere, and I was like, oh well, we'll just keep going. And then she walked over and she'd said, what's the first words for this? And I went, I don't know. Like, I says, what are my first chords? I don't learn your parts. Like, come on. And then we just had to, it was just that really awkward thing of, I can't remember, it was such an easy song as well, and we've done it like acoustically, we've done it hundreds of times.
You know what? What's really interesting, you say that, because I told you we're playing at the garden party. I put up like a tiny little clip of it, but they had been out gigging the night before, a pub in town, and so they were just thought, we'll just repeat the same set. So they got to like one of the songs, and mandolin player starts doing his wee intro, whatever band, I don't know what instrument he was playing. He starts strumming away, and the whistle player looks and goes, you're going too slow, you need to go faster. So he's like, speaks up and starts trying to play, no, it's too fast. So he's like, what's being, and so he's like, the whistle player starts again. It's like, you're playing the wrong song. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm like, this is it. And they're like, this isn't gonna work. So we just had to like, they just had to like quit the song because they were like, they can't figure out how it went together. So it's like, you know, even though they literally played the whole set the previous night, like do it all the time,
Yeah.
just no idea what. Yeah.
We had a really interesting one was we were playing someone's wedding, and for a first dance they wanted, do you know the song Iris, like Goo Goo Dolls?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So they wanted that, but it's all in like open tune on acoustic guitar. So I'd had to take a specific acoustic along, and for their first dance, it was just me playing the acoustic guitar, and it wasn't a particularly difficult thing to do. But I'd had that in my mind, like I need to make sure that's going to be good because they're going to be videoing that, and that's going to be their special, special day. And I was so worried about it. And we got through the first song, and it was, it was brilliant. I was so pleased. But then the second song was "Can't Hurry Love," and the bass player starts with like just a super easy. Was like I don't know, like 5-1, whatever, and super easy. And he was just playing that until I grabbed my electric guitar, and I was so relaxed because I'd got through the first dance, and off he goes playing, and I came screaming in with the first chord on the electric guitar, and it was like a half step apart, and I was like, "What the?" I thought, "What's going on?" And then I thought, "It's definitely an A. It's definitely an A." So I did it again, and like it was a half step off again, and I went, and I'd looked at my bass player, and he'd moved it back, so he'd started like he was playing like I don't know, like A flat, and we'd moved it because my sister couldn't grab it at that, at the original pitch, so we shifted it. And we were so like worried about that first song, and it was actually the one we'd done hundreds of times, and then we had to try and cycle through and change key so my sister could actually sing it. Just thought, what an absolute show after that. But the same exact thing, we had a deaf bass player. This was like last year. We got a deaf bass player, and the same song, it did it again. So the exact same thing happened again, but because we'd been through the exact same situation before, I was like, it's fine. When we get to the chorus, let's just slide it up, and we're fine. Yeah. We're okay.
Oh my goodness, that's yeah. It is. I often find though, like if I'm jamming with people, sometimes it's the ones that I haven't practiced, the songs that I don't know at all are the ones which go the best because I don't have any preconceived ideas of what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just me or if that's general, but because I do quite a lot of improvising, and just with being fiddle player, I don't ever know what anything goes like. And so I just jump in and just, because especially with pop and rock and everything, it's generally pretty predictable where the chords are going. It's not like classical where you have to know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's the songs that I really have never heard before, have no idea what's going to go on, that I end up enjoying playing the most. And I don't know if that's really weird.
Well, see, I think that level of freedom that you've got with improvising, that's something that it's a part of my playing that I really want to get better at. And when you're so comfortable with it, and I'm not as comfortable, like I'm quite happy to jam. I've done, I do it quite frequently, but I still have that big worry of, so there was an example of this. There was a guitar tutor moved into our area while I was teaching at this music shop. And he'd moved over from Brazil, and he's a virtuoso electric guitar player from Brazil, absolutely amazing. And the guitar shop put on like an evening for him where he came and showed what he was going to do and get students to sign up. And I went along too, and he played some of his own stuff and some covers, and my jaw was just on the floor, and I thought, Jesus. And one of my students went like, "Oh, Darren, you should get up and like, why don't you get up and do something with Miguel?" And like Miguel waved me up, and he says like, "Come on, man, let's jam." And I was like, "Absolutely not, mate. Like 100% no. Like you just carry on. I'm just gonna sit in the corner over here." And like I would have really enjoyed having a go, but
sometimes it is like, but I would do the same thing, like if I'm not comfortable with something. But I think I do wish sometimes that we had more confidence in ourselves to give it a go in public, because I will do it in private, but it's something else to do it. But I honestly, I see, like, as I've gotten older and gotten more confident, improvising on stage is just like jamming with mates.
Yeah.
It's just doing the same thing. And it's just, I think I'm really fortunate with, I think it's so much easier to do with violin or any sort of melody instrument, which just plays one note. For the, if I'm improvising, I don't improvise in chords because I'm not that good. I'm like,
yeah, you are. Come on.
No, I'm really not. Have you heard this amazing violinist who I've just stumbled across called Robert Balanis?
No.
And he does incredible. You gotta look him up. I'll send you a link to him. Does, like, Billie Eilish Bad Guy.
Yeah.
And he's like retuning the violin while he's playing. Like tuning different strings to get lower notes to get down to and then retuning again and just doing all. Just it sounds like there's like 5 people playing all at once, and it's just him on his family. It's just phenomenal.
But do you think though, if you can take inspiration from that rather than, because I've been guilty in the past of being too competitive, and I see someone doing this stuff, and I'm like, you end up like, if you get bitter about it, and that's how I used to be. It's like, I'm never gonna do that. So when you're talking about the retuning, there's a guitar player called John Gom. He does the same, and he's
I think I've seen some of his. He got stuff up on YouTube.
Yeah, he's got loads of good stuff.
I have seen some.
There's a guy, I'll send you some stuff too. There's a guy called, his stage name is Bumblefoot, but his proper name's Ron Thal. And he plays a fretless, like a double necked. So one of his guitars is fretless, one's fretted.
Yeah.
And he also plays with thimbles on his fingers. So it's like the infinite fret guitar. So he hits all these harmonics further up. So his guitar's fretboard stretches the entire length of, and you hear some of the stuff he's doing, you think like, that's not human. Like, but if you look at it as inspiration, like you think he's dedicated so much time to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I think, like, as a teacher, as a student, I was never told to experiment. I was always told, this is how you do it. This is the right way. Anything else is wrong. And it was very much spoon fed. And I've become less and less like that. The more I teach, I'm more like, go away, experiment on your instruments, see what different noises you can make. Like, we'll see what happens if you hold the bow a different way, which way makes a nicer sound for you? What happens if you hold your violin all like this versus, if you're open, what happens to your sound? And just experiment and try out different things. Try holding your bow upside down. Try doing whatever you like with it. Because I think that's when people start getting creative and discovering new things that they can do with their instruments.
100%. It's innovation, isn't it? Like, and
Absolutely.
nothing will happen if people don't take risks.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's so much easier to do if you're given that permission, as a child. It's like, as an adult, you're like told, okay, go and experiment your instrument. You're like, okay, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. And it's, always scared of doing it wrong. And it's,
I know,
like,
and that's where the most growth is found, isn't it? Is like by trying those things. It's like a lad that one of my A-level students was asking me the other day. So I'd made this sort of new metal song, and I had these nice chord voicings in on this big 7-string guitar behind us. And he was saying, when you're doing your chord voicings, like how are you coming up with them? And I says, I'm just completely experimenting. I said, I couldn't tell you what I played in the moment. I was just thinking, like, that's what I want to hear. Can I get it on my guitar? And because he was asking me, like, should I be trying to add like a sixth interval or this? I don't know. Just like I could go back and analyze. Just try.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it, isn't it?
It is. It's having that freedom, and it's so good that you've got kids who are coming to you and saying that, and you're like able to give them that feedback of like, go and try it. It's there's no right or wrong, and it's just different. And I think,
and also, like, I genuinely like, and you know this yourself, like, I don't have all the answers for And students often look to you like you do, like you're an infinite pool of knowledge. It's like, I just know what I know, and that's
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, do you ever have fear? Like, I've got, it's the girl I was telling you who's doing a great, just did a great violin distinction, all the rest, a great place. She's doing her diploma on her piano, been playing diploma pieces on her violin. But she like she didn't like, she had just transferred to me from a different teacher, and she didn't like one of the pieces her teacher had chosen for her. So I was like, this is like a month out from the exam. I was like, well, let's try a different one. I was like, let's just give a different one a go. If that one's, you're not feeling it. She sight read one of the grade 8 pieces. And I'm like, you're not supposed to be able to sight read these pieces. You're supposed to have to work at them, you know. And I keep thinking she's going to outgrow me in like 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm like, she's going to be better than me in like 6 months. I'm like, what am I going to do?
That's amazing though. Like, you know,
it's so cool, but it's just like that. Yeah, I always get that fear that somebody's going to come to me and they're just going to be so much better.
Well, you're the second person now to say that. So I had one of my guitar teacher buddies that said that, and I'd said the same thing when I first started doing guitar teaching. I'd done me grades, and I was like, what if someone comes and they already know more than me? Yeah. And then I was like, well, I would just say, like, sorry, mate, I can't teach you. Like, you're going to be better going to see my teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing, is like, I don't have like contacts in Northern Ireland, so that's what I need to do, is network. I'm terrible at networking. I'm like,
there's a good module on Laban about networking.
I know. And I was like, all my contacts are in London. I'm like, can somebody move over to Belfast and just give me a contact? It's like, yeah.
I know. But so Naomi, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I would love to speak to you all night, but I have another 2 interviews now.
Oh, have you?
It's getting so popular that I'm just.
I know.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
That has been fun.
But yeah, like, I'm really pleased that we've got the time to sit and to just talk and natter, and it's nice. This gives me such a cool excuse just to like keep in touch with amazing musicians and amazing people. And I've said it on the last podcast that I did, but any excuse to get in touch, if anyone ever needs anything, or if my skill set is ever useful to anyone else, please get in touch. It's
yeah, like, listen, if you're from Belfast, do hit us up. We can go gig somewhere, jam somewhere.
Let's do it. Let's do some gypsy jazz, man. No one around here wants to do gypsy jazz.
No, here neither. Like, we spent today working out kids' TV show theme tunes. I'm like, why are we doing this?
But that's what we need, man. Like, 100%. I will definitely at some point come over and we can jam it out. I'll do lots of rehearsal and you'll just do it first time.
Oh, right. I wish.
Yeah. But thank you very much for your time.
Enjoy your next chats, and I'll speak to you soon.
I shall. Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Doodles.